Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the OSS Suppressors Helix QD in 7.6.2. This is the 30 cal obvious variant of the Helix QD from OSS Suppressors. If you are interested, I've already done a video previously on 2 generations of the Helix and checked out the titanium 5.56, but I wanted to check out their 7.6.2 can. I've had decent luck in my life with 30 caliber suppressors, but I've also had bad luck, and sometimes going up in caliber size for whatever reason, even when using it on caliber that it's for, say a 308 suppressor on a 308 or some remarkable caliber like 300 blackout or 7.62 by 39, I don't get the same appeal and performance that I get using a suppressor from that company on, say, 5.56. So I wanted to check out their offering for 30 cal. If you're not familiar with OSS suppressors, they take a slightly different approach. It's a baffle-less suppressor. It does not have a traditional stack baffle design like what you'd see from a lot of the other suppressor manufacturers out there. Not that there's anything wrong with monocore or baffles. However, gas regulation, gas management, and muzzle signature are some things that we want to be concerned about. And OSS takes a slightly different approach to the way they build their cans. They use a helical, kind of like a tube feed system to create different performances in the gases, the muzzle gases, as the bullet leaves, uncorks the barrel and goes through the suppressor to change the overall gas performance, pressure, and the muzzle signature. So getting into the 30 cal, well, the cool thing about a 30 cal can is I can put it on anything smaller at that size or smaller than that size. So during the review process, the 2,000 round review process, I used this suppressor on 5.56. I used it on 308, obviously. I also used it on 6.5 Creedmoor and 7.62 by 39. For features, the Helix QD 7.6.2 is, well, it's made out of 17.4 stainless and titanium, which is a pretty good relationship as I've experienced previously with OSS suppressors. That using 2 different metals is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's not a bad thing at all. A lot of suppressor companies do it. Some suppressor companies have a stainless steel blast baffle, and then every other baffle is aluminum or something like that. So it's not unheard of to have different materials mixed into the same suppressor because they're trying to create good balance between performance and weight, and suppressor weight is always a concern because it's on the end of the gun, and we don't want to have to reach out and cause any support issues or whatsoever when we're holding a suppressor, or holding a rifle, I should say, if there's a really, really heavy suppressor on the end. Of course, length is a factor as well. The longer a suppressor is, generally the quieter it is. The shorter a suppressor is, generally the louder it is, but that also factors in with materials and baffle design. And because OSS uses a flow-through technology, which is a departure from traditional suppressor technology, one of the concerns I had going up to the 30 cal size is, was it going to be noticeably louder, even in what I consider to be almost a usual length for a suppressor? Now, mounting of the OSS is pretty straightforward. They do have a proprietary muzzle device, which almost every suppressor company does. I like theirs a lot. This particular suppressor, the 30 cal, they have a muzzle brake, if you will, that they've released. It's simplistic. It's a good muzzle device. It has very low signature, a very low muzzle blast signature if you're just running it without the suppressor. But my main, its main appeal to me is it's a direct thread technology. You screw the can on, you screw the can off. I like things direct thread. If I'm going to put a suppressor on a gun and leave a suppressor on the gun, I actually prefer it to be direct thread to the barrel versus having some kind of QD system, because I want that suppressor to be for that gun, especially when it comes into precision uses. And when I think 30 cal can, I think this at some point is going to spend time on a rifle that I want to shoot accurately, a little bit more accurate than, like, say, an intermediate use carbine or something like that. So if it's a sub-MOI gun, I don't want the direct thread suppressor or the suppressor in general to affect that accuracy at all. I want it to maintain its accuracy standard, and some QD systems affect accuracy. With the OSS, in previous reviews with their previous suppressors in the 5.56 variant, that has not been the case. They've maintained or actually slightly improved the overall accuracy when mounted to that particular rifle. So I wanted to see, getting into it, was this going to be that? Or was it going to be finally some kind of departure from that, where the can, for some reason in this caliber, caused any accuracy issues? But we'll get into that. I do like the simplicity of that mounting system, and I do like their muzzle devices even when not running suppressed. It's a good muzzle device. It helps the muzzle rise. It dissipates the concussive forces of the explosive gases coming out of the barrel very, very well, although it's not something you necessarily want to shoot on an indoor range next to 4 or 5 people that you want to still be friends with after you get done shooting. If you're not familiar with my review process, for video purposes, I do 2,000 rounds. And one of the very first things I do for any firearms accessory that I'm reviewing, where I'm going to put bullets underneath it and make a video out of it, is I'm going to do a 500 round burn down. The purpose of the 500 round burn down is to see if any issues develop within 500 rounds in a very small period of time that I wouldn't otherwise notice over a much longer period of time. So 500 rounds in 3 to 4 minutes versus 500 rounds over 3 to 4 months, weeks, years, whatever. For the burn down purposes, I put it on my Bren 2 in 7.62 by 39. Here's your burn down. That is on the extreme side of realistic. I see a 500 round rate of fire is a little ridiculous. I'm right there with you in agreement. But for suppressors, especially from OSS, quoting the suppressor as full auto rated, even though I didn't shoot it full auto during the review process, or at least for the burn down purposes, 500 rounds of 7.62 by 39. It took me about 3.5 minutes for some auto only to get those rounds down range. I got a little bit of the forbidden popsicle there. I will say the can handles the heat very, very well. I didn't get any crinkling or popping or those very unsettling noises that suppressors make right before they shoot off the end of the gun because you've gotten them too hot. Not an issue. No mounting, no threading issues. I didn't have any failure of the threads, any failure of the suppressor, and from first to last round to my ear, I didn't have the can get louder as it got hotter, which is another thing we're looking for. But for most purposes, 500 rounds in that short period of time is something that most people are never going to do. So if you wanted to know if your suppressor could do it, but you didn't want to invest the ammunition, now it's been done, and as far as the burn down goes, it's a pass. But that isn't all a suppressor is about. Some suppressors could be really good at handling extreme abuse and use, but not actually be very usable otherwise as far as sound. Sound attenuation. This is something that sometimes comes up as people worry about because of a departure from traditional suppressor design, that the suppressor is going to somehow be louder. Now, for full disclosure, I do have service-connected hearing damage, which is one of the reasons I love suppressors so much. And generally, especially not on video, I'm wearing ear pro while I'm shooting suppressed because I kind of want to keep what I got left. So if somebody asks me, hey, is this suppressor any louder than this suppressor, I'm not the guy to ask. Also, I don't do decibel testing because I feel like dragging a $300-400 decibel meter out here to the uncontrolled environment of the range is very, very, very subjective. Now, the manufacturer does quote the decibel ratings. Those are in testing environments based on their test procedure, but there isn't really a standard for decibel ratings. Some people test at the suppressor, some people test at the shooter's ear, some people test 16 feet to the left, standing on one leg in a green room. Everybody's kind of got a different approach to it. Same when we get into the concept of full auto rated. There is a mil-spec standard of full auto rating, but not everybody kind of uses that standard. So they quote the suppressor being full auto rated. I would agree with that based on the 500 round burn down I did, plus the select fire I did with 5.56 on it. It ran, and that's what I want a suppressor to do. Now, what is full auto rated? I guess there's a round count in there. If you shoot enough ammunition through a suppressor, you're going to have a failure at some point. But as far as the sound of the OSS goes, on the calibers I mounted it on the rifles I mounted on, even on my 12.5 Sons of Liberty 308 SBR, it was good and quiet as I would expect it to be. This is not something I would throw on that gun, that 12.5, and shoot it in a bathroom without ear pro in. That probably wouldn't be a very good idea, but at least it wouldn't blow my eardrums out and cause my vision to do the shakes. Sound attenuation, I feel like, is really good, especially for the length of the suppressor I'm getting and for the performance of the suppressor. But outside of hearing attenuation, sound signature, low light signature on this suppressor is really good. In the newest generation of Helix cans from OSS, they've added a flash cap, which helps greatly for muzzle signature. This suppressor does not have that, which is I was kind of like, oh, I wanted that on this suppressor too. And I'm sure they're going to do it in the future. Although it is very helpful when reaching in the safe to easily at a glance tell the difference between a 5.56 can and a 30 caliber can, because sometimes putting a suppressor on a gun is a pass-fail exercise. Because they have different caps at a glance, it was really easy for me to say, that's the 30 cal one, and make sure I didn't put a 5.56 can on a 308. I've never done that before, but hey, there's first time for everything, right? Muzzle signature at night, fantastic. If you shoot any suppressor fast enough, it's going to build up volume and you're going to get a pop. Some suppressors have a first round pop, blowing all that standard air out of the gun, and there's a bunch of chemical explanations for that I'm probably not qualified to talk about. So I won't get into that, but I will notice just from end user experience that every suppressor eventually, if you shoot X amount of rounds in X amount of time, volume will lead to a flash, and then 2-3 rounds later you get another one, and then next round you get another one. It all depends on how much volume and how much gas is in the suppressor when you fire that next round. Also the ammunition, barrel length, and a bunch of other factors attend to it. But even shooting it on a SCAR, 13-inch SCAR, muzzle signature, low light, no issues whatsoever. It was not distracting to my sight picture, which is all I really care about. Elephant in the room, of course, is accuracy. Is the suppressor going to make the rifle less accurate, more accurate? And is there going to be a return to zero shift? For the accuracy checks, I used my SCAR 20S in 308, shooting out to the zero distance of 100 yards. So the way I check this is I shoot a 5-round group, known zero, with the suppressor on. I remove the suppressor, shoot a 5-round group unsuppressed, without adjusting the zero, of course, because we're checking to see, one, we're checking to see if there's going to be a return to zero issue, but we're also checking to see if the zero between suppressed and unsuppressed is significantly bad. And then I put the suppressor back on and shoot another 5-round group. So here is your 5-round group suppressed. Now here is our 5-round group fired immediately afterwards, taking the suppressor off. And here is our 5-round group putting the suppressor back on. Because it is a direct thread to muzzle device suppressor, a close to or exact to return to zero is what I was looking for. Is there a zero shift when you take suppressor off? Yeah, but there's a zero shift when you take almost any suppressor off of any gun. And that zero shift is consistent. So just throughout the review process, moving it back and forth between guns, doing different stuff with it, something that I did notice was I take the suppressor off, put the suppressor back on, take the suppressor off, put the suppressor back on, and I kept seeing consistent performance as far as accuracy is concerned. Generally, and this is my advice to anyone, once you put a suppressor on a gun, leave it there as long as you possibly can until it's time to clean that gun, and then check your zero afterwards. You can clean a gun with a suppressor still on it. God knows I've done it, but I'd be very careful with that. I'd use a bore snake or something like that. I wouldn't mess with patches or anything like that, because you might leave some of those inside the suppressor, and you don't want to do that. So what are my feelings on the Helix QD and 308? I think it's a great can, and it's another product from OSS that impresses me on top of the Helix cans in 5.56 that I've already checked out. I like the suppressor a lot. I would like to see it with the flash cap added, because I definitely noticed a benefit of that. If you're curious about the flash cap and the 5.56 variants, you can do a search on the channel. I've done videos on those as well. This is a great suppressor. I don't have anything bad to say about it, and I'm not going to critique for the sake of critiquing. Sound attenuation is good, durability is good, over 2,000 rounds, over 7.62x39, 308, 5.56, and 6.5 Creedmoor. I had excellent consistent performance from the suppressor, and as much as somebody might, I personally don't have anything bad to say about it. Gas is a question that people bring up. Because DI guns exist, and DI guns are still one of the most popular in the the AR platform, do I notice a significant difference in gas to the face using an OSS can? Yes. Even though on video you probably already, well, I saw gas come out of the ejection port when you pulled the trigger, and I'm like, yeah, because that's kind of where the gas goes. So of course some is gonna, you literally need some gas coming back into that chamber to cycle the gun. So when people say, oh, I still see gas coming in the ejection port, I'm like, yeah, because that's how the gun works. Here's the thing. How'd that gas come out? Did you see it come out as a jet of face scalding carbon and steam and smoke and just bad things? No, it was like a little poof. So the gas, I should say the velocity of the gas, is something we want to pay attention to more than is gas leaving the ejection port on a DI gun where the gas goes to assist in the cycling of the bolt carrier group to continue the cycle of fire uninterrupted. So, does the OSS have noticeably less gas in the chamber compared to more traditional suppressor designs? Absolutely. Does no gas? No. No, that's not a thing, especially on a DI gun. Now, you could make that argument for some other operating system, perhaps, but my experience using this suppressor, the gas that does make it out of the chamber is very manageable, and it comes out as a soft, gentle kiss against the skin versus an angry stream of hate and discontent that goes directly in your eye and makes you shoot like this. So yeah, the flow-through technology, the flow-through design that OSS uses is dramatically beneficial over some of the other suppressors I've used with the more traditional baffle or monocar design. So there's a huge plus there. It's not just a marketing ploy that they're using. There is a noticeable difference in performances with the suppressors. So if you're curious about this suppressor and you're thinking about picking one up, my advice to you is just go ahead and do it. Make sure you buy plenty of muzzle devices so you can use the suppressor on anything you want to put it on, because it's an awesome suppressor that's going to serve you very well. I'm Eric Allen with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.